I learned yesterday that our legislature was considering a 12% increase in their salary. That's what I learned. I also learned that while they have a 12% increase that they're considering and they're probably going to do, I might as well say they're also out of session while they're doing that. That they're also considering cutting our salary by keeping COLA off the table. And meanwhile, increasing our salaries is absolutely important. They decide to put that off and actually increase the sizes of our classrooms. I think it's time. I think it's time. Let's hear it. It's time. 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 Today you'll hear from a variety of perspectives. Teachers, parents. I'm going to ask a few hard questions to the senators, the representatives, the governor. It's time for us to be able to hear their stories. And while we do that, I want to let you know at the end of their stories, we're going to walk around the entire Capitol building. We're going to circle this building with our message. And to be honest with you, I think that's why they're really out of session. We're going to circle this building. So I want to introduce the first person who's going to speak here. A parent, a professor, a WEA member here in Olympia. Please welcome Sunshine Campbell.
Thank you all so much for being here on a Saturday. I'm honored to be in the presence of people who educate our nation's children. I am a parent. This is my son Deacon. This is our family friend Liam, and they are public school students. And as a parent and a teacher educator and a former teacher, I can't tell you how much I appreciate all that teachers do. So much of your work goes unrecognized and unnoticed by the general public, because not only are you teachers, you're also oftentimes stand-in parents, your counselors, your mentors, your social workers, and you are activists, and you are professionals, and you should be treated like a professional. I don't know if you can see my t-shirt. It says, I trust teachers. But in our country's current state of teacher deprofessionalization, too many people who don't know the first thing about public school or the work of teaching are making decisions about how to assess the work that you do in classrooms. There seems to be this widespread myth that our public schools are failing. The media constantly tells us that our students are doing poorly on international assessments. However, we are only getting part of the story. Because recently a group of mathematicians actually analyzed this data a little more closely, and guess what they found? They found that when you separate the data into kids who attend high poverty schools and kids who attend low poverty schools, it turns out actually that the kids who attend low poverty schools outscore all other kids in the world. So it begs the question, is this really about inadequate teachers and inadequate schools? Or is this about our policymakers' inability to properly fund public education? Unfortunately, we have policymakers who are trying to pass laws to defund public education in ways that makes it more challenging for teachers to support their most vulnerable students. The people of Washington, all the way up to the Supreme Court, have made it very clear that our legislature is not adequately funding public education. And our voters have made it very clear that class sizes K-12 need to be smaller. Teachers are speaking out against high-stakes testing and making it clear that these assessments are inaccurate measures of student success and teacher success. And across our state, parents, like me, are opting their children out of these high-stakes tests and making it clear that their children are more than a test score. Yet teachers, parents, and teacher advocates, those who are the most invested in public education and those who are the most knowledgeable about the lived experiences of students in our public schools, are no longer being asked to participate in conversations about the future of education. But I say it's time to crash that party. It's time to demand a place at the table. It's time to speak and have a voice in your profession. It's time for parents to stand up and say enough. It's time for people in higher ed to stand up and say no more. And it's time for teachers and teacher professionals and people and school employees to stand up and tell your representatives today that you are professional and you deserve to be treated like a professional. Thank
you. It's time. Thanks, Sunshine, for coming out here. Thank you. And we've heard from a parent. So now let's hear from some students. I spoke with one of these students earlier. Very bright students, by the way. Kennedy Gwynn and Matthew Crone. When I spoke with Kennedy, I asked her, how did you get roped up into this? Like, what happened? And, you know, she said the most powerful words I could ever think of, and probably the most universal answer we could all think of. I'm angry. Let's hear it and welcome these two young students to the podium.
Hello. My name is Matthew Crone, and I'm a senior at Aberdeen High School. And quality education means a lot to me. In order to maintain a quality education, there needs to be a connection between student and teacher. Small classes have a colossal effect on that connection. Personally, I feel as though I can learn much faster in a class that's smaller. My teachers are able to easier establish connection with me. It is a lot more personal than a test that's given once a year. In addition, research has found that a class of no more than 18 students per teacher is required to produce the greatest benefits, especially in the early grades, those being K-3, which can boost academic achievement. Small classes have also been shown to increase the rate of college attendance by 11%. And what about graduation rates? 3 years or more of small classes affect the graduation rates of low SES students, increasing the odds of graduating by about 67% for 3 years. And more than doubling those odds for 4 years. At my high school, the graduation rates for the class of 2013 was below 70%. Statistically speaking, having lower class sizes would bump significantly that percentage. I want to advocate that teachers be trusted as professional educators, and one tool that they need to better fulfill that is to have smaller classes. To give future students in my society a more quality education, I believe that they need to be in smaller classes. I'm not only saying this as a student, but as a concerned individual that shares the opinion of a majority of students, families, and educators who are voters all across Washington. And I urge you to fund I-1351 because it is right for the future students in my community. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kennedy Gwynn, and I'm a junior at Holcomb High School. I'm here to state the obvious. Students are growing resentful of standardized testing. They keep us awake at night. I have taken 32 standardized tests. Nope, not done yet. I have taken every test imaginable. WASL, MAPS, MSP, Data Director, EOC, HISP, and now Smart Balance. I have been told almost every time, this will be the last time we change the test on you. My question is, why are lawmakers trying to put us in these boxes nobody fits in? Why are lawmakers trying to industrialize a system that can't be industrialized? What if lawmakers went to our schools instead and asked how students and teachers feel about the insane amount of testing? Tests are forcing teachers to stop teaching creativity in their classroom, creating a social disconnection. Students are bored, frustrated, and exhausted. We don't want these tests to be used against us, and that's what is happening. I love school and learning, but I hate the system that looks at me as a test score and not as a student. I strongly believe that education is an ever-changing system that makes standardized testing obsolete. Our education system has evolved from all you need to know is reading, writing, and arithmetic, all the way to no child left behind. Well, we're leaving students behind. High school students already have to do so much to graduate, and these tests don't help but hinder them. Einstein said, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its entire life believing it is stupid. If you keep holding students back from graduating due to these standardized tests, they're not the problem, neither the teacher, but the lawmakers are. Don't tie standardized testing to high school graduation requirements. I hear my classmates say that they would never be teachers due to the chaos of state testing. The lawmakers are chasing kids away from their future job market. Isn't that a problem? I'm so passionate about education that I want to change it for the better. I want a future where kids won't stay awake at night and dread the thought of another day at school. Where kids won't feel that their self-worth is dictated by a test score. To the educators here today, I thank you for what you do. To the legislators here today, please think about what I have said and make a change. Thank you.
You know, I was looking at that plane too, by the way, and I was clapping too. That's not unintentional, you know that, right? Because, like that plane, I think too, it's time to end the strikes. But we don't need to have any more reasons to strike, right? Stop giving us reasons to stop what we're doing, to stop the teaching so that we can actually get the job done. Give us a reason to get the job done. Let us teach. That's right. Let us teach. Let's make them learn. And starting with compensation, we know we are 42nd in the nation when it comes to teacher pay, and we're still the lowest among the West Coast states. Education support professionals, our classified staff, are also struggling to make ends meet. Adam Aguilera is a teacher in the Evergreen School District near Vancouver, and Janie White is the Renton ESP president and middle school office manager. Let's hear what they have to say about what it means to be in their positions.
Wow, It is inspirational to see all of you here this morning. This sea of red for Ed. My name is Adam Aguilera, and I'm an English teacher in the Evergreen School District. I'm speaking to you today about professional compensation. Right now, we are on the verge of a crisis in Washington. There is a teacher shortage that is affecting every district in our state. You are beginning to see it in the substitute teacher shortage. And one of the reasons is because our education programs in our universities are drying up. I am a younger teacher who started teaching during the Great Recession, and I have watched my generation of fellow educators walk away from the profession. You see, when the legislators suspended our COLA for 6 years, froze our salaries, cut our salaries, and ignored rising healthcare premiums, it drove away a new generation of our best and our brightest. And then, when the government attached new expectations, like TPEP, Common Core, overcrowded classrooms, and unfair high-stakes testing, young teachers didn't see that in their take-home pay. Instead, they've gone to the private sector that is offering jobs to our highly educated graduates that are 2 to 3 times higher than a teacher's salary. According to Business Insider, in a study last year, Washington was ranked the 5th strongest state economy in our nation. It is unfathomable that in our economic powerhouse of a state that we are ranked 42nd in the nation for teacher compensation. Many of our legislators have business owner experience, and they should know better that in our kind of competitive state economy, you have to offer higher salaries and benefits if you want to compete for the best employees. And only offering teachers a 3% COLA spread out over 2 years is unacceptable and in contempt of court. Our rising healthcare premiums devour that percentage every year when this Capitol has refused to add even a single dollar to our healthcare plans for years. Our salary schedule is broken. 16 years of service and a teacher caps out on their salary halfway through their teaching profession? And what of the first-year teachers who graduates with a bachelor's degree only starting at $34,000 when they're in debt $34,000 in student loans? Fix it. Make whole the COLA. Restore our health care plans to inflationary rates. If the legislators can allow themselves an 11.2% raise, well, that's about how much teachers lost in the COLA suspension for 6 years. Teachers are not asking for more than they deserve. We are only asking for fairness. Fairness. So when it comes to the budget, it is not enough to wait for a surplus. If certain legislators are reluctant to raise taxes, then in the billions in tax cuts that are gifts to special interests. Tax cuts are not job creators. Teachers are job creators. We teach the next small business owner, the entrepreneur, the engineer, the doctor, the banker, the technician. We take the broken child who has given up on their future and inspire them to be anyone they want to be in life. They go to college instead of prison because of their teachers. Teachers are also civic-minded. We volunteer and invest our dollars into the community and to our local businesses. Professionally compensate 85,000 educators, and you will make the best investment for our students and for our state economy.
Good morning, education colleagues. Good morning. It is time. You know, I had a great speech and I'm still going to tell you some things. But this helicopter right there that I know cameras turned to it first, when it said put our students first, I'm going to tell you today what our education support professionals feel and do to put our students first. We work 2 to 3 jobs. We go around finding public assistance to survive. We go to food banks. We live in our cars. We're homeless. Some of us have to sit on and sleep on sofas and couches with our friends and families because we cannot afford just a 1-bedroom apartment. When it's time for us to have a paycheck that we get paid once a month, and by the time the 15th comes, we can't pay for gas, we can't buy Starbucks, we can't go around buying our personal needs because we're so busy trying to survive on the little income that we have. When we talk about COLA and living wage for us, we haven't seen a living wage for 6 years. That's not talking about our professional budgets and benefits that we need to survive. Shame on everyone in legislation to think that it's okay to have educators that are taking care of our children to give them a better future, that we can go to school every day, struggling to get into school and survive, but we still have that smile on our face to greet our kids when they get on our bus, to greet our kids when they get off the bus, to greet our kids to walk through the hallways, to greet our kids in time for the cafeteria, to greet our kids when they come in to an injury in the clinic. See, we don't have the normal Band-Aids and doing the temperatures to see if they're okay. We have kids that we have to feed them through tubes. We have to check their diabetics to make sure they're okay, to give them their medicine to make sure they're okay during the day. We have to be their counselors. We have to be their parents. We have to let them trust us and be consistent with them. We have to go every day hearing a story that maybe their parents were arrested, or maybe, just maybe, they didn't know where they were going to end up at the end of the night, how they were going to be able to eat for the next day. So we have to make sure they have nutrition. We have to make sure that they're secure and safe. We have to make sure that our students can go into the classrooms where our teachers are the ones that should be doing the testing for our kids to develop the relationship that they have with our kids, because our legislators don't have a relationship with our kids. The legislators have no idea what our kids go through every day. They're looking at numbers that are not accurate. They're looking at pictures that are not accurate. They're hearing stories that are not accurate. They go around and they try to divide our ESPs and our teachers and our higher ed and our parents against each other. We are colleagues. We are a team. It is time. It is time. time for our legislators to provide higher ed for professional wages, COLAs, affordable health care, and more staffing. Stop looking at decreasing staffing. You're supposed to increase staffing and decrease the small and make smaller class sizes. You know, I talk to my ESPs as I leave. I ask them a question. I said, tell me, just give me one word on how you feel. And I want you to hear this. They feel disgusted, shameful, inequity, disrespected. They're exhausted. They're struggling. They're the best accountants that you know because they have to learn how to provide with the little income they have. Shame on you, legislators. It's time for you to start taking care of our students and their futures and taking care of our employees who deserve more than what you are giving us. It is the law. It is time. It is time. It is time.
I think it's time to hear from one of our elected officials. What do you think? Before we do it, I just want to point out there, we're all in red, save for a few of us in green. Whoopsie is here. State employees, let me hear from you guys. Because I think you can hear the same message and you can clap for the same message that we're all in this boat together. Thank you for showing it. Let's hear from one gentleman. I think you all know him. We've heard from educators. He's going to be next. Governor Inslee. Governor Inslee, come on down.
Good morning. What a great day to be in red, fighting for the paramount duty of the state of Washington. And that's what we're here to talk about. And I am so glad that Kim Mead has brought some brothers and sisters to figure out how we fulfill this duty, the paramount duty of the state of Washington. Now, I was asked by Mario to answer one simple question this morning. And he asked me this question: do educators deserve a COLA? And I have a simple answer to that question. You're darn right, educators deserve a COLA in the state of Washington. They deserve it in Tenino, they deserve it in Tacoma, they deserve it in Tenasket. Science teachers, math teachers, art teachers deserve a COLA this year, and they deserve a real COLA. And I want to tell you what that is. After 6 years, the longest period of time of having inflation eat up a teacher's take-home pay every single year, the longest they've gone without a COLA, they deserve a real COLA, and that's just not what the initiative said, it's what inflation has done. They deserve a full 4.8% COLA, and I'm going to fight for that in the budget as long as I have breath. This is the right. And I want to tell you, So let me suggest as well, in our proposal, we know that educators stand with their fellow hardworking people. And we have proposed a COLA that is fair and reasonable, not just for educators, but for your brothers and sisters who are state employees. It It is 4.8%. We ought to have all working people move forward on this, and we should not allow people to go down below that. I want to tell you, there are efforts to do something less than 4.8%, and I want to tell you that is unacceptable. We've got to get this right and have the full meal deal. And I want to tell you why I believe this so strongly. I want to share you a little story. 2 weeks ago, my daughter-in-law sent me an email. She has a wonderful young man named Brody. He's my first grandson. Brody is a kindergarten student at Wilkes Elementary School in Kitsap County. And Brody is one of those charming, creative, young, active young students. You know about active young students. And his teacher, Ms. Carol Cottle, sent an email to my daughter-in-law with an idea about help Brody reach his full potential. And it was one of those great messages from a teacher that happen 1,000 times a day across the state of Washington, where a teacher has gone the extra mile to try to figure out how to help their student be everything they can. And it was a great idea, and I really thought it was wonderful, and Megan sent it to me. But when I read the email, I noticed something about it. It was sent at 12:30 a.m. on a Thursday morning. And I believe, and I'm familiar with that, because my dad was a teacher at South and Garfield High School. I knew about him sending, it wasn't emails in those days, it was grading papers at 12:30 in the morning. Let's make sure legislators help our educators get a reasonable COLA 24 hours a day, because they're working 24 hours a day, frankly, for the kids of this state. Now, I do want to mention a few other things. I was asked to address the COLA, but one of the reasons I love teachers is that when I talk to them, the COLA isn't necessarily the first thing they talk to me about. They talk about wanting the resources to actually do their job. They talk about having their kids ready when they get to kindergarten. They talk about early child education. That's why my budget is the largest investment in new early child education in the state of Washington in state history. And we want to make sure we get those kids ready for you when they get to first grade. We want to get that done. They talk about smaller class sizes. That's why we're moving forward, starting with kindergarten for third grade. They talk about graduation rates. They start talking about graduation rates. And I want to give a shout out to the pastoral high schools and the Lincoln high schools and all the work you've done that is dramatically increasing graduation rates in the state of Washington. Congratulations for the work you've done. So I hope that you're going to raise your voices loud. I hope you're going to be consistent. I hope you'll say that our students are worth it, our schools are worth it, our communities are worth it, our educators are worth it. Let's go make it right for the people of the state of Washington. Good luck. Let's go do some good work. Thanks a lot.
But here's the thing. This is such an important issue. I'm so honored that you guys invited me to come and be here with you today. Let me tell you, thank you. Let me tell you why it matters to me. Some of you may know this. I became blind at age 8 due to a rare form of childhood cancer. And in many parts of the world, and even some parts of this country, that would have consigned me to a life of subsisting on charity, right? No dignity, no opportunity. But what happened was it was teachers, public school teachers, who came together with classified staff to give me a path from Braille to Yale. That's what happened. And let me tell you something. Class size was so critical because it was important for me not to be in a separate room, segregated. I wanted to be mainstream with other kids as much as I could. But in order for that to happen, I had to be in classes where the teacher could attend to every student's needs, could circulate and get to know each of us and address each of our needs, because every student has some kind of a special need, and so every student should be treated specially, right? So let me tell you, there's three things that our opponents misunderstand. There's three things they misunderstand about the class size issue. The first thing is they believe the voters just don't understand this issue. So when we all voted for this thing, voted for 1351, we just didn't know what class size meant. Now I'll tell you, there's a lot of complicated terms in the education arena. Levy swap, tri-pay, levy equalization, MSOC, all these terms. You know what's not complicated? Do you want your kid in a school where their class will have fewer than 25 kids? It's not complicated. It's not complicated. We did not misunderstand. And I'll tell you the idea that the second thing that they mischaracterize, misunderstand, is they say, well, that's a good idea, but only in kindergarten through third grade. After that, it doesn't matter anymore. You know, all you have to do is look at a brochure for any private school or any college or university. Any college or university says, come and pay us $40,000, $50,000 a year because we have a 9-to-1 student-to-faculty ratio, 7-to-1 student-to-faculty ratio. And those are 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds who can learn better in a seminar setting than in a lecture setting. So it makes no sense to say that after age 8, it just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter anymore how individualized, how differentiated your learning is. That's the second thing they mischaracterize. The third and final thing they mischaracterize, they say, okay, so even if those things are true, Cyrus, even if those things are true, we hear you, but we just don't have the money because we got to fund the things we want to do first. Then we'll get to what the voters want to vote. Then they'll say, well, the voters didn't know they would cost money. We got to do our own things first, but the voters know that things cost money. They're saying this is our money, spend it on the things that we care about. And I'll tell you, Senator, my friend Senator Hill says, oh well, raising taxes ought to be the last resort. You know what? You know what ought to be the last resort? Reversing the vote that the people took in November. That's the last resort. That's his first response. That's their first response. That's his first response. That ought to be our last resort. And so we have to tell this story over and over again because people feel in their gut that kids can learn better. They care more about that than whether their algebra textbook was licensed in 2011 or 2010 or 2009. They care more about that. We have to continue to make this point. And I want to just disagree with one thing. I don't think it's time. I think it's past time. You guys are saying it. It's past time, and the only thing that we seem to be able to do ahead of schedule in the legislature is adjourn. All right? So you keep working with us. Thank you for your solidarity. Thank you for your friendship. All right? Thank you.
Our final issue is teacher evaluations. We've heard a lot about that lately. In fact, 300 of you were here a few weeks ago. Who was here 3 weeks ago? Awesome. Rallying against a terrible bill that would have passed in the Senate, tying teacher evaluations to student work, student test scores. As if that's going to solve the problem. I want to introduce our next speaker, Kimberly Larson. Kimberly is going to speak on just that issue. Kimberly.
So I'm from Spokane. Okay. And I teach science at Shaw Middle School. And yes, and this is my story, but I have a feeling it's your story as well. My second period class, I have 14 special ed kids in my class, I have 5 of those 14 are autistic. I have 4 students with IEPs. I have a pregnant 8th grade girl, and I have 30 students. And I am not a special ed teacher. And I'm evaluated all the time. I'm observed in my second period class. To say the least, I work very hard. This is my story. I'm not talking about my school, I'm talking about teacher evaluation. Like the vast majority of educators here, I support an effective teacher evaluation model. I believe that when TPEP is done right, it does promote excellence in teaching. When it's done right, it does promote us being better teachers. I believe this, and more importantly, I know this because I've spent several years learning about TPEP, working with my district to bring a framework to our district. I've worked with hundreds of teachers in trainings focused on building competency in using the TPEP model to be reflective and to grow as an educator. I do this on Saturdays, a lot. I've helped to build their confidence in their ability to best communicate with their administrators with regards to their evaluation. And I promoted the goal of teachers and administrators forming collaborative relationships focused on honest reflection, feedback, and high expectations for our profession. But when the state Senate voted to tie the test scores to my teacher evaluation, I felt emotions about the state government. Emotions that I'm sure you all could articulate yourselves. Right now, I'm outraged. And I'm outraged that by tying the voting to our evaluations, our state legislators have made a huge mistake. They are ignoring the strength of the framework and of the relationships being formed between the administration and teachers. I believed in TPEP. I trusted that the goal of TPEP was to build a genuine, reflective, and collaborative system in schools. And I have worked hard to bring this perspective to my colleagues. I'm honestly furious because this vote leads me to believe that clearly a reflective and effective evaluation system was never the authentic goal for the state government when they made this a law. I don't buy it now. I did in the beginning. And I feel totally disrespected by the state. Worse than that, I feel that my own integrity has been put into question. I've literally trained hundreds of teachers on TPEP, and I've helped them and guided them. I believed in TPEP, and I'm honestly wondering if TPEP is really just about cleaning house. A student test score linked to my evaluation ignores the variables, the ones I brought up, that impact the lives and learning of my students long before they cross the threshold of my classroom door. Attaching a student's test score to a teacher ignores the years of learning that led to that score, including all of the external circumstances that come far beyond the walls of our schools. Our students come to school daily, often because it is a better place than home. This does not mean that they are fully capable to show their best on a test or an assignment, but at least they show up. Attaching a test score to my evaluation as a teacher is bad enough, but when the test score is narrow and it measures only one part of student knowledge and learning, it becomes ridiculous. What about the development and growth in areas of persistence and grit and cooperation? There is no way the SBAC or MSP measures any of that. I teach at Shaw Middle School by choice, as many of you choose to teach where you teach. I love this school, I love the children. I choose to teach in a school that has a high number of students living in extreme poverty. We are over 90% free and reduced. And they often have highly extreme life situations. I choose to work with these students even though I know the struggles that come with this choice on a daily basis. Often they're homeless, they have no food, no electricity, no clean clothes, no place to study, and often no parent home at night. And these all are variables that impact my classroom and their learning daily. Legislators who supported the vote say, hey, it was just 1%. I so struggle with them. I struggle with the fact that by attaching a test score to a teacher evaluation, our government is selling our kids and our teachers out for a buck. And this buck is so small. It is such a small percentage of our total educational expense. It doesn't make sense why they would ever leverage it against the amazing teachers in our state. Even 1 iota of 1% attached to evaluations is not appropriate. I'm very concerned. In fact, in my building, I'm a science department lead. My entire department is leaving my school because the conditions are so hard there. And I'm worried that other teachers are going to be moving to schools where those variables that impact teaching and learning are not so extreme, or even worse, that they're leaving the profession altogether. But as a teacher, as all of you know, every day we start with hope. I wake up every day hoping that my students will actually make it to school. And that honestly, I'm going to be excellent in what I do. But my hope for today is that our state's politicians have the courage to allow the current evaluation system to do what it is supposed to do, and that this state never ties test scores to teacher evaluation, no matter how much money they are offered, because it's going to harm the students and teachers. We are going to lose teachers. My hope today is that the state of Washington will do what is right, that our elected officials will be an example for our children, that they will act with integrity and not pass a bill that is ultimately just about money. Thank you.
For the master's degrees. Speaker Chopp, Speaker Frank Chopp, come on down. We have a question for you. Speaker Chopp, when you recently joined us at Nathan Hale High School in Seattle, you saw and heard the outpouring of opposition to SB 5748, which mandates the use of state student test scores in teacher evaluations. This misguided bill passed the Senate, but thankfully, there seems to be a little support for it in the House. Can we count on your continued leadership in the House to do the right thing and make sure test scores are not mandated by teacher evaluations?
Thank you very much. Yes, you can count on me. Mandating test scores for teacher evaluations is not fair, valid, or reliable. It is just plain wrong. The real question we need to ask some legislators when it comes to this issue is what is best for our kids? The answer is not to follow ideological nonsense. The answer is not to punish teachers. The answer is not to submit to the insanity of a federal law that labels every public school a failure. Now, some legislators need to consider the real issues that make a teacher great. A test can't measure compassion and caring or the understanding that each child is different or learns differently. Well, we should consider all the hours spent by you before and after school helping students to do better. And how hard educators and students work together to be great together. And we need to address the opportunity gap in our schools by fighting against the poverty and the inequality in our society. Enacting bad policy at the state level as a result of bad policy at the federal level doesn't help schools and doesn't help students. What's best for our kids is for us to work together. What's best for our kids is promoting personal growth for students and professional development for our educators. What's best for our kids is a cooperative approach that is positive, not punitive. That's why I'm particularly proud that we stood up to an arbitrary federal bureaucrat. We knew our position was right for our kids, And we stuck to that despite all the pressure from all the so-called experts and all the editorial boards. They were wrong and we were right. And now that's being proven to be the case by the U.S. Senate actually moving to change that unjust federal law. Okay, you asked me a question. Now I want to ask you some questions, and I want to hear your answers. You got that? Do you believe education is the best way for kids to get up and out of poverty? Yes! Do you believe good schools need good funding? Yes! Do you believe the legislature should listen to you? Yes! Now, there are many legislators who say they support education, but do you believe that one of the best ways to support education is to support our educators? Yes! Now, this isn't a test. But let me ask you a few last questions. Is it time to stop blaming teachers? Yes! Is it time the legislature cared about our educators? Yes! Is it time after 6 years that you get a pay raise? Yes! Is it time to fully fund education? Yes! It is time. It is time. It is time. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. We have one last speaker, of course. And on that note, well, I don't really need to introduce her. 85,000 employees in our union, one of the best unions on earth. And let's welcome its president, Kim Mead.
This has been, I would say, probably the most inspirational moment I've had with all of you, and I want to thank you for this opportunity. First of all, I also want to thank all of our people that came to listen to us today that didn't run away because we were coming. I don't know if I would want to face a sea of red that was chanting and maybe not all that positive, but for a very good reason, because I believe we call it, it's time. Do you know how we can tell it's time? Because we are all standing up and say we're not taking it anymore. You know, we have thousands of educators that are saying it's not enough. It's time to stand up for ourselves, our students, and our communities. And I want to personally give a shout out. In this last week, we have 15 locals that have or will be staging walkouts. Lakewood, Stanwood, Camino, Arlington, Bellingham, Blaine, Ferndale, Mount Vernon, Anacortes, Cedar-Woolley, Burlington Edison, Elk Harbor, Conway, Lake Washington, South Woodby, and that's not all. And the reason why we're seeing strikes is because we do put kids first. I was going to ask if you're angry yet, but I think I already know the answer. Yeah, a lot of pumpernickel going on. And we have, unfortunately, a lot of people behind me have no idea what that means. Yeah. So, one of the things I want to also talk about is the fact that we want to make sure that we're making one great big victorious lap around the building. I could go on and talk about all the Senate bills that we've already taken a look at that don't address anything that I would call public education. And I think they are hearing us loud and clear when we talk about it's time. But I have never been, like I said, so encouraged, so thrilled with the fact that we are all standing here together for all of us, all across this state, all of our public employees standing hand in hand saying, it's time for the future of our state. So at this point in time, I think we're getting ready to do a lap.
Education now! Education now!